Welcome to our Parent Experience video series where we discuss a different topic related to the unique experience of parenting a child with a pediatric orthopedic condition. Today's parent is Nikki, who's going to talk about her experience of receiving her child's diagnosis in utero and how she began to process that before her child was born. Hi, Nikki. Thanks for being here.
Hi, Maureen. You're welcome.
Yeah, so why don't we just start with when did you first hear your child's diagnosis?
I found out about my child's potential diagnosis probably around 30 weeks. In my pregnancy, I had to have an extra ultrasound because my daughter had growth restrictions, so they were monitoring me closely. And I remember the exact moment the midwife called. I remember where I was standing, I remember who I was with. It was like, I think when you experience something that is trauma to the brain, you have too vivid of a memory of that. But my midwife called and said that my ultrasound tech picked up clubfeet. I had no idea what clubfeet was. I actually thought that there was the potential that my child was going to have no feet. She didn't explain it to me either. But she said that 9 times out of 10 that they were wrong, and I had to go to a specialist. So I had to wait about another week before I got to see the specialist from there. But yeah, I was around 30 weeks, and my initial 18-week scan was totally normal. So it was really shocking for me to go through the initial process, thinking everything was fine, and then just being blindsided by a phone call.
So what was your initial response when you first heard it? Was it fear, anxiety? What was the pervasive kind of emotion that you felt?
I think I went into a state of shock.
Mm.
Definitely overwhelmed. I remember my dad was there when I got the call. He was the only person around. I think my husband was away at work, and I was hysterical. But because I had no idea what it was, and no one really explained it to me either. So I was just left with my thoughts in Google. And I was, just completely distraught. I had no idea what to expect. And once I got over that initial state of just overwhelming sense of sadness and just unknown fear, anxiety, I think it's kind of all wrapped into one. I think I just went into a state of shock pretty much from that moment on, and until I had him. Shock and freeze. I think I was just living in this state of unknown for the next 10 weeks of just waiting, and I just kind of felt frozen in time.
How long was it before you felt like you were kind of coming out of that shock? How long do you think that lasted?
I went and saw a specialist a week later, and he confirmed that it was club feet. And then I had multiple other ultrasounds for the rest of my pregnancy, and my son ended up being born with something more complex than typical club feet. And so I actually had multiple rounds of this experience happen throughout my pregnancy. Every ultrasound, I had an ultrasound almost every week. They would be like, oh, his femur's shorter than it should be, and oh no, it's not this week, and this is wrong, this kind of looks wrong this week. And so I just got to the point where I was like, I don't actually want any more ultrasounds, no one knows. And it was summertime, and I had a 2-year-old, and I just tried to I was like, there's nothing I can do now except for just try and enjoy my summer and enjoy my child, and understand a little bit about what's going on. But I actually got to the point where they were going to induce me at 37 weeks, and I was totally ready for it. And then they changed their mind, that they were like, nope, we're not going to. Everything looks okay. And I had to have that happen every week. And I got to the point at 40 weeks where I was like, induce me now. I need to know what's going on. And I think that might have been the first time that I really like learned to speak up for myself and for him in that moment, because they would have just let me wait like another 2 weeks. But I was like, no, like this is enough. Like I'm not doing any more ultrasounds. I'm not doing any more stress tests. Like we need to meet this baby and see what's going on.
Yeah, I think that that's a, it sounds like a similar experience for a lot of parents where you get to a point where you're just like, you're not, the information that I'm getting from these isn't information that's actually changing anything. It's not being helpful because it's not, you get to a point where it's just, it's information that may be happening, but you don't know for sure. And so you're just like, this isn't actually being helpful anymore. And learning to say, like, no, I'm not doing this is a unique skill.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is. And you're right. You get to a point where you're like, this is all potential, and and
Mhm.
and we have no idea what's actually going on, and we're never gonna know until we meet until until birth. And so
Yeah.
it's just like this state of limbo of like unknown, kind of
Mhm.
just like haze, um, wanting to feel excited but feeling so overwhelmed, and yeah.
Mhm. Were you ever offered any information or support during your pregnancy when you received the diagnosis or multiple other potential diagnoses?
Yeah, I actually was in a unique position because I work for a child development association, and we have an orthopedic surgeon that comes to our office every 3 months, and he is, is one of the ones that I would have been potentially seeing. And he was in the office one day when I was at work. And so I actually had the opportunity to sit down and talk with him about what to potentially expect, um, which was helpful. But again, it was a lot of like, this is what we usually do, and it was just a, he gave me a pamphlet on club feet, which I think probably hasn't been updated in a long time, and it is about the main method that they use for bracing club feet and casting for club feet, and so it was useful to read about the process. Um, but it I don't think it prepared me enough for what was to come in the end. And I think that was unique. I don't think most people get to actually talk to an orthopedic surgeon prior to birth. Did you get to talk to an orthopedic surgeon ahead of time?
We scheduled a consultation with our potential doctor, but that was because we had that opportunity and we took the initiative to do it. Otherwise, I don't think we would have. I know lots of families who don't. If you do want that opportunity, I think you have to make it happen by scheduling it and then you have to pay for it. It's just like another appointment. So,
I think it's important to, if I think it's an important step. I think having that before, so you can like gain some understanding and some knowledge, is really important. But I wish there was more to it than just like, here's the pamphlet. Like I think it's a
mhm,
really good time for you to meet the doctor that you might be potentially seeing and see if it's the right fit. Because oftentimes when the baby comes out, you're still in shock and you're just doing
mhm.
what you're told. So it's a nice time to be able to look at that stage of it ahead of time and meet with the person that you're potentially going to be having treat your child. Um, but I think you're right. I don't think it's offered.
Yeah, I think it is beneficial. That's one of the benefits of having a diagnosis like clubfoot in utero, because then you're able to have that time to research. But I've heard, from other parents too, that the ones that didn't find out until birth, they're like, in a way, it was nice because then I got to enjoy the rest of my pregnancy, and there's nothing I could really do about it other than prepare myself. And so I think it's just twofold of whether what you do with that time. Was there anything that you found really helpful as far as emotionally processing the diagnosis for the remainder of your pregnancy?
I made a real point of, I did this a couple times, like during pregnancy and throughout the first year of my son's life. Um, And I think it all kind of ties together. But I had a lot of people be like, it's gonna be okay, like it's probably nothing.
Mm.
And I just found that completely, like, that wasn't helpful. I
Mhm.
found early on that I just kind of learned to like gravitate to the people in my life that were more authentic and genuine and more just naturally supportive, and were like, yeah, that's tough, like just more honest and truthful, like that's gonna be hard, and like we'll be here for you. And um I just found that to be, I found that I was like really shifting my social circle, to be with people that
Mhm.
just I felt like understood me in that moment, um,
Mhm.
and would be open to talking about it if I wanted to talk about it, but were totally normal if I didn't feel like talking about it, and just were like more in tune to how I was doing. And I think that was the most helpful thing in just spending time with my family and trying to enjoy my pregnancy, um, for what it was. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think that people have good intentions of trying to be encouraging, but there is a balance with that, with a sense of the like positivity of like everything's going to be fine, it'll be good, everything will be great. And it's like, well, I appreciate your thoughts in that, but the reality is like that's not an authentic emotional experience of what I'm experiencing right now. And so you do experience like a little bit of that shift in what type of support you need, right? When everything is going according to plan, that kind of, oh, blanket statement of everything's cool, you're going to do great, it hits differently than when things are identified as issues that you're going to have to change so much of your parenting
Right.
and trying to wrap your head around that. So I think that's good advice, is lean into the people that you feel are providing that support. And if that support is different, or those people who are providing that support are different than the people that you anticipated, that's okay. And it's normal. And you need to find the support that you need. And that's totally okay and normal.
It is, and it's okay. And I think that took me a really long time to realize, like especially in early stages of diagnosis, but even within the first year, like
Mm.
friendship shifts and support shift, and people that you thought might be there for you can't in the way that you need them to, and it's just about you
Mhm.
finding the right support. And I found I spent a lot of time on my own that last month, which is like untypical for me, but I would like go to the beach by
Mhm.
myself for a couple hours and like take the
Mhm.
opportunity to cry, because I didn't feel like it around other people, and I was trying to put on a brave
Mhm.
front. But I think like feeling the emotion that I was feeling, um, was also like a really important part of the process, because it's unknown and it's scary, and you have this expectation of your pregnancy and your child, and it might look different and you don't even know yet. So it's okay to feel those moments of sadness and that grief for the childhood that you thought your kid was going to have, or that pregnancy experience that you thought you were going to have. And if you want to feel those emotions on your own or feel them with other people, like that's everyone's own journey, but it is important to to feel everything.
Mhm. I, yeah, I agree. And that's one of the things I encourage with families too, to lean in towards that and to feel all the things, right? Which is, I think, not natural when you are pregnant, because people are so like excited, and there's this, I don't think there's a lot of room for women to feel their full gamut of emotions while they're pregnant, because they're expected to present in a certain way of how excited and positive they are. But when you get this diagnosis in that state, you're it shifts. And I think it's important for you. I always also say, like, you have to find the right support for you, because it's not a blanket support system. Like, it's not a one size fits all model. You have to figure out what works for you. And honestly, what works for you might be different than what's worked for you in the past. Like you're saying, like spending alone time, right? Where you never really did that before, but it became really important for you in those moments. So leaning into what feels right and what feels supportive, even if that's different than what you were doing before.
Yeah, exactly.
What's a takeaway that you have for parents who are listening to this and kind of in that position? Maybe they just got a diagnosis in utero. What's one thing that you would tell them?
I think I would tell them to learn to trust their intuition above anything else. Like that took me a long time to feel empowered to trust my intuition. I I work in the medical field, and we always say like parents like family centeredness and parents know their child the most, but when you are actually in that position, you don't feel that way often. You often feel like you're being told what to do. I don't even, sometimes you don't even get a discussion about it. Like we just rolled into our first appointment with my son at 4 days old, and I was expecting like all these tests and like an entire day of appointments, and they just put casts on his legs and sent us home, and I I knew that wasn't right, but I was in a state of shock, and I just went along with it for like a month. And I wish that I trusted my intuition and had a stronger voice that first week. So find your voice and follow your intuition, and you are your child's best advocate, and you're always going to be that way, even if it doesn't feel easy and it doesn't feel fair. The reality is that no one else is going to advocate for them like you can. And so just knowing what they need, so doing the research, if you're feeling like something's not right, take the initiative and do the research and talk to the people and get a second opinion if you need one, and that's okay. And yeah, I think just follow your instinct, follow your intuition. That would be my main takeaway for any diagnosis, any medical
Mhm.
experience.
Mhm. Well, that's great advice. Thank you so much, Nikki.
You're welcome.
Appreciate you sharing your experience today, and hopefully we will hear more from you and your story in the future.
Thank you, Maureen.